for me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, thanks, Barman, and it's a great pleasure to be able to do this. I'm really sorry I'm not there in person. It was always the plan that I come, but with COVID and a few other issues, I ended up not coming to Europe in time for this conference. I'll be in Italy in a couple of months instead. Not to worry. So let me talk a little bit about what my perspective here is. So normally when we think about forecasting for social good, we're thinking about how we can use forecasting to create social good. So forecasting for public health or for emergencies or anything where we're using forecasting to do social good. I'm thinking about it from the other perspective where we're creating social good that forecasters themselves can use. And Barman's already alluded to a couple of these types of activities, the Democratizing Forecasting Project as an example, and some of the online resources that he mentioned that are in progress. Other examples of where we can create social good that will help forecasters everywhere. So I'm going to talk about 5 different types of social good that I think we can create that will be helpful to forecasters. And those forecasters could be in the developing world, but they could be anywhere else as well. It's where we can provide resources that will be helpful to people. So I'm going to talk about data sets, software, textbooks, other types of educational resources, and finally research papers. And my perspective is that social good is created whenever we make these types of resources widely and freely available so that everyone and anyone can use them. So data sets, it's actually really helpful for forecasters to have large open access data sets that they can test new methods on and check whether any new proposals actually do reasonably well against old methods. It also allows easier empirical comparisons against other methods if the data sets are widely used and public. And if you're teaching, it helps generate student exercises. So when I first started teaching forecasting, which is a very long time ago now, back in the 1990s, there was nothing really available that was public that was easy to access for forecasters. And so I set up, 1996, I set up a time series data library, which had about 500 time series that I had collected from textbooks, lots of different textbooks from various online sources that I found, or people sent them to me. And this became really widely used for a few years. I would attend conferences and I was known much more for this than anything else that I'd done at the time. Remember, this was the very early days of the internet. Internet started really in about 1993. And so this was online about 1994. And by 1996, it looked like this. And it didn't really change much for a long time. In 2012, it was still looking like that. It had grown a little bit as people had sent me series, but it really wasn't that better developed, despite the long time between those 2 screenshots of what the website looked like. And it still exists, although it's not particularly widely used now. That's what it is now. It's now an R package, and you can install it and use the data in R. There's lots of other R packages I've created over the years that make it easy for people to do forecast comparisons and to find data sets. Pretty well every book I've ever written, I created a data set, an R package with the data in it. So the first 5 of these packages, which are on CRAN, contain data from different books that I've written. And at some point, I decided it would be helpful for the M competition data to be available more easily for forecasters. So I created an R package called MComp, which had the data from the M and the M3 competitions, along with the forecasts from those competitions. So it would be easy to do comparisons and to see whether your methods were any good. And then a little later, TS Comp data was sort of an umbrella package that contained data from every forecasting competition that I had data from at that time, up to the Global Energy Forecasting Competition that TAO organised in 2012. And then more recently, I've set up a new website with some colleagues called forecastingdata.org. This was only done this year. And it has a lot of data sets. Let's just scroll down to the data. It has all of the data sets I've already mentioned from the M competition and the tourism competition, but loads and loads more data. Sometimes, you know, some of these have very long series, over 200,000 observations. Yeah, from all different types of domains. We have loads of them. And the idea is that people can grab this data and use it for examples. We have Python and R code that make it easy to import data sets, ready-made, ready to go into your analysis. But the other thing we've done, if I just scroll down to the next section, is we've run a bunch of forecasting methods across these data sets and provided the results so that you can check whether any new method that people create does particularly well. So for every one of these data sets, we've got some of the basic methods like theta and TBATS and ETS, but also some more fancy methods like DeepAR and NBeats and some of the more machine learning type methods. And the bold is the one that does best, averaging across the MACE values for each data set. And so when someone comes along and says, I've got a fancy new method, which I think is really good for electricity forecasting, you can grab our electricity hourly forecasting data. You can see how everyone else has done on that data set and try your method on it. So this website has lots of information about the data and how to get it and how to do comparisons. And I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people to be able to do forecast comparisons easily without having to re-implement the methods. Next thing I wanted to talk about was software. Obviously, open source software makes state-of-the-art forecasting methods available to everyone and easy to use. That makes sure that new forecasting methods can be easily used. But it also influences the way people think about forecasting. Just as an example, very early on, I started using 80% for prediction intervals and 95% prediction intervals in all my forecast plots, with the dark shaded region for 80% and the light shaded region for 95%. And now that's used by almost everyone else. Like I've even seen papers that talk about the traditional way to present forecasting intervals, which is only traditional because I proposed it. Well, I started doing it and using it as examples in all my software, and it became the way people do things. So writing open source software actually not only helps people do things, but it can change the way they think about the problem. So I started doing this again back in the 1990s. And up until about 2002, it was just R functions, or in fact S+ functions before that I stuck on my website in case anyone wanted to use them. And I know people did because they'd write to me about them. And then I thought I should make a package. So I wrote a package, but I just stuck it on my website and I didn't do anything else with it until 2006, when I decided, well, when actually the CRAN, some of the R core people on CRAN said, you know, you really should put this on CRAN. So I did. And I was astonished at how much it started to get used. So the first version was on CRAN in 2006. And at that stage, it really just had ETS and the theta method and nice plotting functions. And that was about it. We added auto.arima a year later, wrote a paper about it in JSS a year after that, version 2 and 3. And we started adding a lot more functions to do things over time. And by the time it got down to version 8, it was pretty well settled. I didn't want to do anything else to it. I thought it was fairly complete, and that if anybody else came along and wanted to add new functions, they should write their own package as an add-on to this package. And so I decided to retire it, not in the sense of not making it available, but not adding new features to it other than bug fixes. And so for the last 5 years, I've been bug fixing, and we still put out releases at least once every 6 months or so, but they're just bug fix releases to make sure that it's still working for everybody. And I started working on a new set of packages, the Sybil, Fable, and Feasts packages, which came out in 2018 and 2019. And my the third edition of my book uses these packages, which I think makes it easier for people to do data wrangling using tidy features, the tidyverse and dplyr and things like that, while they're doing forecasting. And I certainly use it myself for all my consulting now. So currently, these are the package numbers that are on CRAN. Just to show you that these actually do get used a lot. Monthly downloads from about 2013. So this is in thousands. So that was being downloaded way back to 2006, but in small numbers of thousands. So we're up to now about nearly getting up towards 400,000 downloads per month. So it's about 4 million downloads per year of the forecast package. That's an enormous number of people that can do forecasting much more easily than they could before. The Fable package has been a little slower to take off. You can see when we released it, and it's getting up. It's now just over 10,000 downloads a month. So it's a long way to go before it gets up to 400,000, but I'm hopeful that it will eventually kick on. I've no idea what that weird outlier is. At the end of 2015, we just had huge numbers of downloads and then it went back to where it was. No idea what was going on. It's not just me, of course, that writes packages. There's lots of packages on CRAN, and so I maintain this website, the CRAN Task View website, as a sort of a guided list of the packages that are available. And so if you scroll, and it's not just forecasting, this is time series generally from all different fields, but there is a forecasting section down here, and there's lots of packages available, and you'll see that it's obviously some of mine are there, but also Smooth, which is from Ivan Lancaster, and one of his other ones is here as well. I think the grey box package right down the bottom, there's the grey box package, and lots of other ones as well. So hopefully that's useful to people, and we maintain that pretty regularly. You can see the last update was only a month ago. Next thing I wanted to talk about was textbooks. Textbooks makes forecasting available to a wide audience. When I started my career, I did write a textbook pretty early on. My first book was that one, came out in 1998. It was already well known. This was the third edition. I wasn't involved in the first two, and it was well known as sort of the textbook in forecasting. And I haven't got time to tell the story about how I got involved, but I did get involved in the third edition, and it sold really well. My concern with it was, though, that it sold for a ridiculous amount of money. It costs, it's still available, even though it's well out of date, and it's still selling for like more than $150 a copy, which makes it prohibitive for a lot of students and for a lot of forecasters that are not particularly rich. So I was quite unhappy with the fact that and I had no control over the price. I was unhappy with the fact that it was sold for so much. So I decided that if I was going to do another book, I was going to make it free. So I started work on a new book, which we called Forecasting Principles and Practice. And after I'd written a few chapters, I realized it would be helpful to have another author. So I asked George Athanasopoulos to join me. And this is what it looked like at first. It was done on WordPress on my own website. And it was a pain to put, cut and paste and put the equations in. It was just really difficult to work with. So eventually I decided to switch to another platform. This was Drupal, and to launch a publisher, which was called OTexts. And that worked okay. That was the first edition, but it was still really painful to maintain a print edition as well as an online edition. And there was just a lot of cutting and pasting to make sure everything worked. And then Bookdown came out. Bookdown is an R package that enables you to write books that can be output as PDF for print, and they can be output as HTML for the web. And so I thought this is what I really needed. So as soon as I saw that it was available, I decided, let's do another edition and let's do it in Bookdown. And I had some thoughts about how to improve the book and to add some chapters. So George and I wrote the second edition, and this is the website. Some of you will be familiar with this, where each of the sections is a page, and the R code is available, and it makes it really easy for people to just copy in this little button at the top, copy code, and paste it into their own RStudio instance and check that everything works. That was the third edition, the second edition, and then that was using the forecast package. And then when the Fable package came out, we decided let's do a new edition for the Fable package, but leave the other one up in case people still want to use the forecast package. So this is the second edition. And as you can see, a lot of it's identical. It's just using a different package, and so there's different code. So this also gets very widely used. We're up to just over 1 million monthly readers now, monthly page views, sorry. So over 1 million page views per month. and about 100,000 new users every month, which is astonishing. Like, that's an enormous number of people that are now having access to high quality, well, I think it's high quality, educational resources for forecasting. And there's been about 5.4 million unique users from 209 countries. So we're really reaching a big audience here. It's been translated into Chinese and Korean, Japanese, Italian, and Greek. And we're currently working with translators for French, Spanish, Russian, and Portuguese. And my own students, a lot of them speak Chinese better than they speak English, so they're often switching between the editions. And of course, it's available in print, not for 150 US, but for the latest versions are about 70. But we always make sure that the online edition is always the most up-to-date one. We're not updating the print edition very frequently. But if people want it in print, they can get it in print. There's some education resources that go along with it, which also provide another type of social good. So we have exercise solutions. They have been requested by over 1,000 instructors from 91 countries, a very large number from the United States, but also reasonably big numbers from countries like India and Brazil, Mexico, and 91 of them. So there's some tiny little countries that we've got requests for solutions from. And then we also make some slides available so that other people can run similar courses to what we run at Monash. They're welcome to use these slides. There's slides available for both the second edition and the third edition of the book. They can download the Markdown files from GitHub, change them however they wish. We're trying to make it easy for other people to teach forecasting. Last thing I wanted to mention was research papers. So making your papers open access makes the latest research available to everyone. It makes research ideas available earlier than they appear in the journals, and it allows for informal peer review. I've always made sure my research papers are online as early as possible, and I think it's been really helpful. Not all researchers like to do this, so let me just go through why I think it's a good idea. Firstly, it bypasses the journal paywalls. Your preprint of the paper can stay on your website or on RePEC or on Archive or wherever you've posted it. It can stay there even after the final article appears in print in a journal. So when somebody's from a country that doesn't have access to that journal, or from a university that doesn't subscribe to it, wants to read your article, they can grab the preprint version of it. Every journal allows you to do this. At least in statistics and econometrics and in the disciplines that forecasters publish in. The International Journal of Forecasting explicitly allows it. You can put your preprint, not the final version, not the proof that appears in the IJF, but the preprint that you submitted to the journal. You can put that online and it exists, can stay there permanently. Some people have said, putting your stuff online means that you're giving other people a head start on your ideas. I disagree. I think it reduces the risk of someone beating you because there's a public paper with a date on it. You can point to that and you can say, the idea was there first. Most government funding agencies now actually require you to do this. You must make a version of your paper available. Certainly the Australian Research Council does. I know the UK one does. I know the National Science Federation in the US does. So it's become very common that if you're getting government funding, you have to make your preprints available. It also increases your citations because people see your paper earlier, so they're more likely to cite it, and then your citations increase. It also means that people are more likely to be able to read your paper because it's more widely available and therefore they're more likely to cite it. So I think that there's no downsides as far as I can tell to putting your stuff online as early as possible. It can be on your own website, it can be on Archive or RePEC or Social Science Research Network or wherever, or your own university paper repository. But I do think it's important to make it available. I am pretty frustrated sometimes when I see people have put it on a university repository, but hidden it so that you can't actually download it without jumping hoops. That seems crazy to me. If it is on RePEC, this one down here, If it is on REPEC, which stands for Research Papers in Economics, then every week there's a report comes out that I am responsible for, which lists all of the new papers that have appeared on REPEC that have something to do with forecasting. And so I've been doing this for more than 10 years with the help of some of my PhD students. And you can subscribe to it either as an email or as an RSS feed and find out what new papers come out every single week that are to do with forecasting, if they appeared on REPEC. I'd really like to be able to widen it, but I don't have the infrastructure to enable us to do that yet. So let me just finish by just commenting on why I've done all of this sort of thing over my career, why I've chosen to do a lot of creating a lot of resources that are free and available, and also make some comments about how other people might be able to get involved in this type of activity. So first of all, why do I do it? Well, I'm paid as a professor at a public university to do research and to teach. I'm on a salary, and it seems to me that the purpose of the university is to create knowledge and to share it. So I don't understand why I wouldn't want to do this. My motivation is to do things that are useful and that have impact. And by making some of these things available, it certainly helps with that. So primarily, I just like it. I like doing things that are useful. I like seeing my work used. I like seeing that there are downloads of my papers or my books or my R packages. I like seeing the fact that there are things that I write can actually be used by somebody. That gives me a real buzz. So that's the first reason. I just like doing it. And I can afford to do it because I'm at a university that pays me a salary that allows me to do this sort of thing. The second reason is that it's actually good for my career to do this. Not directly, but indirectly it helps because it increases citations of my papers. When I write an R package that implements a method, and that method was first described in a paper that I wrote, then when somebody uses that package, they will cite the paper. So my TBATS paper, for example, has lots of citations, and I'm sure it wouldn't have nowhere near the number of citations if there wasn't a function in the forecast package that enabled people to implement it. So they can use the method, and if they like it, they then cite the paper. So it increases citations enormously of my papers. And the third reason is I get a lot of consulting requests and speaking invitations because people know about me, which they wouldn't if I didn't do some of this type of activity. And so that's my motivation. What could other people do? Well, for a start, the forecastingdata.org website is designed so people can contribute their own data. If you'd like to do so, there's instructions on the website about how to go about it. I've talked about R packages, but I haven't talked about Python because I've never written anything particularly good in Python. There's a wide open space there. I know there's some people doing some good stuff now, but there's a lot of room to create really good material in other languages. And Python's the obvious one to start with. Other people can write online textbooks. Like we have one book with a particular market in mind. There's nothing that's really advanced in forecasting that's online. There's nothing that's really online that deals with, supply chain issues within forecasting or organizational behavior in forecasting or other areas. Plenty of room for people to write their own textbooks, and now it's really easy to do using the Bookdown package or using Corto, which is a brand new tool similar to Bookdown, but enables you to write books, not just with R code, but with other languages as well. There's loads of room for forecasting education resources. I've really only done solutions to my book and some slides, but other people can do other slides or videos. I've done virtually no educational videos online. Lots of things that people can create that I'm sure they've already created for their own classes, but they've just not made widely available. At least I don't know about them. That would be great to see some of those sorts of things. Please put all your research papers online, whatever repository you like or your own website. It helps a lot. And please use reproducible practices so that when other people see your paper, they can reproduce it, they can adapt the code. Code available in public GitHub repositories is really, really helpful. for creating another form of social good for forecasters. Okay, let me finish up there. These slides are available from that link there, that website, and every resource that I've talked about, I've got a link on that website so you can see where they are if you missed it as I went along, and just a few places you can contact me. Thank you, and we'll stop there.
Is it working now? Okay, thank you so much, Rob. Is there any question from the audience or online for Rob? Yes, please. All right, there is no, okay. Okay. I don't know if you can, yeah, please go ahead.
I guess you could have repeated it. I have a question for you. In your book, I noticed in your forecasting practice and principles 2 and 3, it sounds like it's fairly similar content, but you just had some different R packages in there. What led you to the decision to create another version as opposed to maybe just changing the code and giving a toggle switch to switch back and forth between the code versions?
So it's a little more than just code changes. There's a whole new chapter actually in the 3rd edition that's not in the 2nd edition, partly because the way the 3rd edition is set up makes it easy to do and to analyze a lot of time series simultaneously. So instead of doing one series at a time, which is what the forecast package was designed to do, the Fable package is designed to do many series simultaneously. And that means that you can also do sort of analysis of collections of time series. So we have a chapter on how to think about features of time series and analyze them as a whole collection. And because the package allows you to do multiple series, we've changed quite a lot of the examples around so that it demonstrates how to do it on lots of series rather than one at a time. So it was a bit more than just changing the code. But we did want, since a lot of people were using the 2nd edition, initially we thought, well, let's leave that up there so that we don't suddenly change it while someone's in the middle of a class teaching it. And then we've sort of thought, oh, well, there's no real harm in leaving both editions up. So we've done so.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think there is a question, yeah, from the online audience. Jerome, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question, please?
Hi, yeah, thanks a lot. Great talk. I couldn't agree more with the open resources. My question is, have you noticed at a university level, that is, say, judgments for things like tenure, in the time that you've kind of worked since the 90s, are judgments around tenure, are you seeing them to be more based on these open resources that people are producing as opposed to just, say, the rigid maybe publications, grants, and university service?
They certainly are in my department, but that's partly been my influence. But we're the only department I know of anywhere in the world where our package on CRAN now counts like a paper does. And that's been quite hard to get through, but it now counts. And certainly the philosophy where I am is that we try to do as much as we can openly, and that will count in promotions or tenure conversations. I can't really talk about other universities because I've been at Monash for nearly 30 years and I don't really know.
Sure. Any pointers on others maybe trying to get their universities to be more, to look at open resources more favorably?
Well, I can certainly share what I wrote to convince our university to make software available. I wrote just a 1 or 2 page paper citing the evidence of why this was a good idea, demonstrating that there was a movement worldwide to do this, and they were convinced. I'm happy to share that. I'll put a link on the website that I gave at the end to that.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions? We still have time for one more.
One question is from the audience, from Sahan. I have a small question. What kind of software vacuum or implementation neediness is there on the domain of time series forecasting?
So can you repeat that? I've got software implementation about time series, but in what context?
Yeah. What kind of software vacuum or implementation neediness is there on the domain of time series forecasting?
Okay, what are the gaps in software? So the biggest one is really good Python libraries for time series analysis. There is some work going on about that now, that like the auto.arima function in the R package, there's now a good Python equivalent. In fact, it does slightly better when you do a forecast accuracy test running them in parallel. There's now a good ETS one, but a lot of the other stuff that's in these packages is not particularly well developed in Python. And there's nothing like the Fable package, which enables you to forecast a lot of time series simultaneously. There's nothing like that available in Python. There's not really a good forecast reconciliation library yet that I know about. Maybe there is, but I don't know about it. So there's plenty of space in the Python world to create open source resources for time series analysis.